This is Becoming Inclusive from the Kaleidoscope Group, where we're thinking differently about diversity, equity, and inclusion for more empowered people at work. We're committed to real change, and that begins with real conversations. Welcome in.
Hi, Reginald Ponder, and this is another edition of Becoming Inclusive. I get to share this platform with my co-host, Catherine Potts, and it seems like Flor is our co-host as well, because we just invite her back every time that we can. Thanks for joining us again, Flor.
Thank you so much, Reggie, for the invitation. Catherine, the same thing to you. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I feel that I'm the usual. I'm here all the time. This is the place to be, and I'm glad to be able to share. I'm not going to say wisdom because that's arrogant, to share perspectives and opinions with both of you and with our audience as well.
Yes, we love you, Flor.
I love you both.
That is absolutely fantastic. Before we actually get into the subject, when we talk about becoming inclusive, we started our day with a beautiful picture of Oliver, and that was being inclusive, including the young people in our day. What a wonderful picture. I know, Kat, that made you smile. So hopefully that'll keep you energized and yes, we can really get into this topic. Our topic today is actually, we've been talking a lot about it, is leadership. We've been talking about it from so many different angles. Today, we're going to talk about leadership, and we're really going to talk a little bit about leadership in relationship to the different styles and the different approaches, and even how it might show up in different areas. Because Flor, we know that your expertise is global. So what you get to see is that you get to see the manifestation of leadership in so many different ways. So I want to throw it to you first and say, just a general question. Do you see leadership different by country, by region, by location?
Yes, absolutely. And I would like to start saying that, as a foundation, usually when we think about leadership and the recipe, the ingredients for a leader, we go straight to the strengths that are related to technical knowledge, good people skills, good judgment, integrity, honesty. But the reality is that there are some other ingredients, I like to call them condiments, that we need to add to the mix of being a good leader. And these ingredients, aspects, or condiments are going to depend on the cultural background of the leader and actually the region where this leader is conducting business or is leading her or their team. These condiments are going to be different from region to region. They are culturally dependent, and they are going to be quite related to the way diversity, equity, and inclusion is approached in different regions or countries in the world. So let's think about leadership and that recipe from two aspects, the general ingredients that we always include, and then those little aspects that are going to make every leader in the world different, especially from region to region.
So Flor, you started making me think about food, because basically you're saying
same.
Is that we have the base recipe, but then we need to put the spice on it. Is that whatever that is, when you travel from country to country, they still cook chicken, but it tastes different in every place. And so that's kind of what you have me thinking about. And when I think about this, I think about there's two things that I think about that are the base. And one of those is vision, and one of those is business acumen.
Yep.
And so you're saying we need to go beyond those things, because those condiments, so to speak, really round out the leadership style or the leadership profile, if you will.
And I think that profile is also sort of like US centric, right? Because we grow up in school, these are the things the leader has, right? here in the US. And it's like, do you have this? Do you have this? But it's like way more nuanced than that. And then so once you get to the global, it's even more nuanced. So I feel like too, a common mistake is thinking that there's this like list of leadership skills and this is what this list is. And that's it. That's it. You either have this or you don't have it. And that's just like way too narrow.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that this is a key, you are bringing up a key point when we work with leaders and with the leadership teams in different organizations that are global, organizations around the world, helping them prepare their strategy for DEI, because we need to be aware of those cultural nuances. We need to know that cultures differ in their implicit theory of leadership. For each culture, leaders look and behave differently. We have the base recipe, the chicken, like Regis said, but the condiments are different. There are cultures that favor leaders are more hierarchical and more authoritarian, or cultures that favor more horizontal or with organizational structures. So we need to take into consideration those different layers and different types of leadership around the world to be able to plan a DI strategy that is relevant to the global organizations.
So here's my pushback or my challenge, Flora.
Yeah.
That people who may not like the words DE and I, diversity, equity, and inclusion sometimes just really, really rubs people the wrong way.
Yeah.
So you talked about this in one of our discussions about you might not use the word equity in one country or diversity in other places. So my pushback is someone might say to us, does leadership really impact DE&I? And your opening statement was it really funnels into how we look at diversity, equity, and inclusion. So talk about that just a little bit more. Convince me that it's related.
Well, and really quick, I just want to add one little caveat to that. How does inclusivity work with leadership, right? Because leadership should have, diverse representation, but does it necessarily have to be inclusive?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I see two things here, no? So to address Reggie's point first, leadership plays a key role in the successful achievement, in that success achievement that we need to have for DEI. I strongly believe that you cannot have success on any DEI journey within an organization if we don't have the involvement of leadership and leadership commitment. As a matter of fact, that's one of our critical success factors when we talk about DEI and strategy. And that's a success factor that encompasses every organization in the world. I think this is not just US-centric. This is something that is globally relevant. We do need leadership involvement. How that involvement is going to look like, that there is where we need to consider the different cultures, the different DEI nuances, and how DEI is approached by leaders in their regions. But the involvement of leadership in the success of a DEI strategy is without a doubt, to me, is a critical aspect. You need them. You need to have your leadership team involved. So the DEI cascades across different levels of the organization.
And I'm not sure if you answered Kat's question, but there's another one that comes up for me, is that you talked about these organizations. It could be a horizontal organization, it could be a hierarchical organization. And so how does that come into play? So if I have a more of a flat leadership organization, that looks different than as it relates to DE&I. Does that look different as it relates to DE&I versus a hierarchical organization?
Yes, absolutely. Let me park that here, and I'm gonna go to you, Kat. Inclusion looks, well, actually, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion looks pretty different around the world. And actually, each individual approaches DEI in a different way. And that's why we always start our journeys with organizations by creating that alignment, executive alignment, leadership alignment, and creating that vision that is going to bring everyone to one start point, and then we're walking to that North Star. Inclusion is going to mean a different thing for different leaders around the world depending on their culture. However, we have encountered that the majority of those leaders believe in an inclusive workplace, and believe the why. So this is why we need to do it. Yes, we do believe it, but the how is what it is different. How we achieve that point is what varies from country to country. We have some foundational foundational knowledge and strategies for that, but that's gonna vary depending on the regional world where you're approaching this. And circling back to you, Reggie, yes, depending on the structure of the organization, you are gonna have to take different initiatives. The conversation is going to be different. We have had organizations, clients that have approached us where the CEO is right away in the first call. He's there talking with us, chatting about the DEI strategy, where we get to meet the C-suite by the second meeting. Because these organizations have a flatter, a more horizontal organizational structure, and the involvement of leadership of the leadership team is right away from the beginning there. So they are 100% backing up these initiatives. Then we have some others where it takes us 10, 12 meetings to finally get an appointment with the CEO or with the C-suite, and being able to see and ponder what is their position regarding DEI within the organization. And that's going to vary, or that's different depending on the size, obviously, of the organization, the number of employees, the revenue the organization produces, and also the region of the world where the organization is conducting business.
Wow.
And I wonder too, because I challenge. It's interesting because when Reggie mentioned flat, right? How do you know? But you have leadership even with a flat company. It seems sort of contradicting a little bit, right? So I wonder what that looks like because if are flat companies real? And do you think that they really exist across different regions? Even in the US, I challenge if flat really exists, even in the US. So yeah. I wonder what that looks like abroad.
Yes, and I was going to tell you that the United States is one of the examples of that flat organizational structure. However, we try, and I know you two do too. We don't make blanket statements. So we don't make blanket statements and say all the Americans, all the Germans or the Chinese do this. But that the more horizontal structure, I think, is not related to the position. So we have leaders, they are there, but the way those leaders interact with the people that report to them, the style of communication, the leadership style, that 4 dimension of diversity that we have in our model of dimensions of diversity that we mentioned, the way I conduct my business, the way I communicate, the way my employees or the members of the organization perceive me, see me as a leader. We have some organizations, and I can tell you in Latin America, Venezuela, Colombia, you find that hierarchy, that where the boss is unreachable. Our concepts of leadership sometimes involve, we don't have direct contact or report to the boss, to the leader, to the president of the company. And he has the basic recipe for a leader, and his condiments or her condiments or their condiments, depending on what we're talking about, are to be defined as leaders in Venezuela, for example, requires that the leader possess those qualities of being unreachable. So they nurture that. And if they bring themselves down to a more direct communication with the people that reports to them, they are looked upon like, this is not a good leader. He is way too here. What is the boss? What is this person doing here? So it depends. There are too many layers. Culture plays a huge role. But again, we need to analyze the situation of each organization and be very careful with the blanket statements.
And so when we look at DE&I from a leadership perspective, I really like you making me back up, because I got so many things in my head. It's not condiments. I don't know if it's ingredients. Maybe ingredients. I'll say. And so that makes so many questions to this meal that you're making right here. When you look at the leadership structure, and you talk about how I visualized it from a flat organization, because you talked about the interaction, and then when you gave that illustration of that, I cannot as a leader bring myself even down to the other folks. So I really understand that. How does that, when you say it's important to leaders are important to DE&I, I need some more concrete than it's important. What do you mean it's important to DE&I?
Well, I think that the first thing is when you as an employee or members, different organizations call their employees differently. And when you as an employee are in an organization where DEI is brought to the table and we are working on making DEI efforts, and you don't see your leaders committed to that, you don't see your leaders communicating the message, voicing what DEI represents for the organization, when you don't see then also living what they are preaching. We are leaders, we are going to work on more diversity, we're going to be more inclusive, and that could mean that they are more representative of their employee base. Maybe you have a C-suite that truly represents the employees are in the company, and you have employees that represent the community. So this is like a cycle. You have leaders that truly represent employees and employees that represent the community. So at the end, you are having a makeup of leadership that truly represents the community where the business is, where the company or the organization is conducting business. So what I think is leadership has an involvement, and not because it's the right thing to do, but there are some specific behaviors that the leadership can display and competencies that leadership can display to be an ally, and, well, not just an ally, a key stakeholder in the success of DEI, by representation, by voicing, communicating, articulating what DEI represents and means for the organization, by truly getting involved in the initiatives. So there are different ways that we can guarantee that leadership brings success to the journey.
Oh, I think too, it's like, if you see a leader and they're not committed to it, right? But they're the leaders or the decision makers. If you don't see the decision makers committed to the initiative, then you're not going to buy that there's going to be any sustainable change, or there's any kind of devotion to that. So it's hard to then want to follow anything or buy into anything.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
And Flor, so since you've been on a couple of times, that my pet peeve as we talk about inclusion is this whole issue of pay equity. And around the world, pay equity seems to be terrible just globally.
Yeah.
I don't understand how this is such an issue from an inclusion perspective, a difficult issue to solve. So what are you seeing leaders do to address this around the world?
Well, I think the first, when you start talking about this, the first thing that comes to my mind, this is very US related, but here in the state of New York, now posting the salary range of the position that is open is mandatory. So they need to do that. That many times we have talent, especially diverse talent that a pool of talent that is informed by underrepresented groups. But then when you're going to apply to the job, the salary range is not there. And you never know if you're being paid in an equitable way or not. That's right. I think that this is a great thing. Here in the United States, it's happening in New York. I know it's happening in different states as well. I think Connecticut began a few weeks ago. So I think this is one of the steps. In other regions, unfortunately, lack of equity continues to be an issue. So I know we keep saying DEI is approach and is manifested in different ways around the world, but we need to remember there are some key points that are kind of present in every region that we go. And inequity and inequality is one of those aspects that we continue seeing.
And particularly as it relates to women, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Gender continues being a challenge, a global challenge. I like to say a DI challenge that is globally relevant.
Well, that, and it's, that cultural hierarchy, right? In some cultures, it's not as common to see women in leadership positions, or is it expected? Or is that something that people want to co-sign to? And it's not necessarily that that's wrong, but it's then how do you impact that DEI initiative then, right?
And I like what you say, Kat. It is not about right or wrong. It is about understanding. If we are positioning ourselves as DI consultants or anyone that is listening, watching this podcast, and they are starting this journey as DI consultants or professionals or people that are interested in bringing diversity, equity, and inclusion to their organization, we need is awareness. We need to be aware that for some regions in the world, part of the ingredients or condiments or whatever you want aspects of a good leader does not include being a female because it's not embedded in their culture. So it's how you adjust and adapt your DI strategy to those nuances and how we get involvement from leadership in a way that in the futures better reflect an inclusive workplace.
I love that, Flor. I really do. And when we talk about this, I don't want to make it seem like the U.S. is really ahead of the curve, because we know that there's some other countries. I saw a study that talked about there are many countries that are totally ahead of the U.S. as it relates to women and women empowerment and women leadership. Is that what you're seeing out in the marketplace as well?
Yes, as well. And that's why it's also difficult to speak about regions, because even when we talk about the Latin America region and we look at South America, there are different levels of readiness and maturity of DI among the countries. So the DI reality of women in Argentina is completely different to the DI reality of women in Peru, Bolivia, or Venezuela. So even within the regions, you see that there are some countries that have achieved a level of maturity that is a little bit higher than other nations. So this is something that we see around the world constantly.
Right. So I had to get my little pet peeve in here about pay equity. It's just one that
go for it.
It bothers me all the time. So for somebody listening to our podcast, if they were to walk away from this and we were talking about leadership qualities or those condiments, do you have some condiments that you think that would help people add to the flavor of their leadership?
Yes, I do believe that there are some ingredients, or we like to call them soft skills. To me, they are not soft at all. They are just strong and key aspects that we need to include in the recipe for a good leader. And I think these aspects are also globally relevant. Empathy, authenticity, humbleness. These are things that are meaningful and relevant to every region in the world. And they are part of what a leader nowadays needs to show to be able to be considered a good leader.
And I imagine patience too would be one.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, Kat. I love that.
See, Kat, I'm a leave. You guys got this. But on the thing on humbleness, it seems to me as we talk about leaders in different regions, you're already shaking your head. So go ahead and finish my statement here.
And that's one of the things that we constantly find as it's a challenge, but it's a nice challenge to have, because when we meet with those executives and we talk about humbleness or humility, the first reaction is like, why are you talking here? We're not supposed to be, humbled. We need to know everything, have all the answers. But I think that with DEI, we all need to agree that no one is an expert on this topic. So when I start my conversation with these executives and I said, I'm a global DI consultant, warning, I'm not an expert. We already lowered a little bit that water level that says you are welcome here to be as humble as you can, because we acknowledge and we know that we don't know everything about DI. This is a subject, this is a topic that we all have the right to not have all the answers. We have the responsibility to continuously grow, and we need to have the safe space to make mistakes, because this is going to happen when you are working with these.
I wonder too, with humbleness, just really quick, also just being okay with what, as a leader, what you're adding to that, right? Like being okay with the role that you're playing in the DEI initiative in terms of areas that you can improve, right? Being humble towards what is the role that I play in this or have played in this, versus feeling like you have to prove that you've been doing it the whole time.
Yes, and I think that, Reggie, you have another podcast here with this topic, because this is a good segue to say that that's going to require a lot of self-awareness as a leader. I acknowledge and I recognize where I am, what I'm doing, accountability. So there's a lot of self-reflection there. And this is the relation between self-awareness and DEI work that we need to approach later on. You will have me here again.
For the self-awareness aspect of a leader is like my thing. Like that is like the biggest thing for me when it comes. So you're getting me fired up, but I know we're kind of out of time.
Yeah, I know.
When it comes to self-awareness.
And so Kat, what Flora just did. She talked about, look, I'm a DE&I consultant, but I'm not an expert. And that means there's room for everybody to come in so we can have the conversation. That seems like doing the commercial for becoming inclusive, because we're never, ever there. We're always becoming. So Flora, thank you so much again. This has been a fascinating and just enjoyable conversation, because I learn something every time you share your perspective. See, you don't want me to say wisdom, but every time you share your perspective, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And I look forward to being here with both of you. You are just a delight to have a conversation with.
So that's it, you guys. This is our edition of Becoming Inclusive. We hope that you will become inclusive. That's Catherine Potts. That's Flora. That's Reggie. We'll see you guys next time in our next episode.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for joining us, and a special thanks to our subscribers. Consider becoming one today. Becoming Inclusive is presented by the Kaleidoscope Group, your full-service diversity, equity, and inclusion partner serving clients worldwide. Learn more and continue the conversation at kgdiversity.com.